Hi everyone, my name is Gabriel and this is the Hour of the Raven, your channel for everything Ravenloft, RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and horror.
Today, we are going to explore the domain of Borca, a kingdom marked by social inequality, ruled by a corrupt aristocracy, surrounded by political intrigues and treacherous murders. Before we start, however, I would like to celebrate with you the 100 videos from our channel, 50 if we count only the English videos. Thank you to all of you who accompany us on this journey, and together we shall unravel more dark secrets of these cursed lands. Are you ready to continue our explorations? Resigned to comply with the terms of our profane agreement with the Arcanoloth in Ahira, we travel to the realm of Borca to explore these lands in search of the Amulet of Souls, an artifact that has disappeared for centuries among the aristocrats of the Disliznia family.
Hour of the Raven.
Borca is a domain of Ravenloft marked by social inequality and by corrupt aristocrats, involved in games of intrigue, seduction, and murder, with two Dark Lords who are expert poisoners. The domain is also the origin place of the Church of Ezra, one of the most present faiths in several domains of the core. The domain is in High Middle Ages, in the Chivalrous era. Borca shares a common origin with the domain of Barovia, and the names of characters, titles, and locations refer us to an Eastern Europe inspiration. However, I believe that the main source of inspiration for this domain is the Renaissance Italy, during the era of the Borgia's rule, although plots of political intrigue and assassinations can also find inspiration in many other regions of our real world. The domain of Borca is located in the central region of the Ravenloft core, the continent where most of the domains that compose the setting are clustered. The current domain of Borca is the result of the union of two domains, which were unified at the time of the Grand Conjunction. The domain of Dorvinia bordered on the south with the lands of Barovia and the kingdom of Borca, on the west with the bellicose realm of Falkovnia, on the east with the land of the Beastmen of Markovnia, and on the north with the desolate lands of Gehenna. The former domain of Borca, previously to the Grand Conjunction, bordered on the north with the domain of Dorvinia, with the kingdom of Falkovnia and Rishmula, on the west with the lands of Arkandale, on the south with the kingdom of Gundarak, and on the east with the lands of Barovia. After the Grand Conjunction, the domains of Dorvinia and Borca were unified, and their territory came to be known only as Borca. This unified domain has two Dark Lords imprisoned in its borders, but the lands around it also undergo drastic political, geographical, and supernatural transformations. The southern kingdom of Gundarak was invaded and conquered by the adjacent kingdoms of Barovia and Invidia. Now, Barovia borders Borca to the east and south, which has also come into contact with the violent and unstable realm of Invidia on the south border. The wild lands of Arkandale to the west were absorbed by the domain of Verbrek. The lands of Hishmulal and Falkovnia still border the north of the domain, but the domains of Gehenna and Markovia that were north of Dorvinia disappeared, giving place to an immense abyss known as the Shadow Rift. Borca's climate is temperate. Its summers are cool and pleasant, giving way to a colder autumn and harsh winters, sometimes plagued by blizzards. Borca marks the transition between the mountainous region of Barovia and the hills and forests that are found in the western domains. To the north and east, close to the border with Barovia, the region is marked by steep mountains and rugged terrain. To the west, Borca is covered by gentle hills and forests, which follow the valleys of Luna and Vasha rivers. The western region is sparsely populated and is marked by two large forests. Above the Vasha river, the forest known as the House of the Sages extends from the domains of Hishmulal occupying most of the northwest region of Borca. To the south of the Vasha and Luna River, in the southeastern region of Borca, is the Blightwood, which borders with the lands of Verbrugge. In the heart of Borca, between the Vasha and Luna rivers, is the Vioera Woods. Once a closed and impassable woods, the opening of the Crimson Road and the expansion of nearby urban centers has surrounded and reduced the forest. As we move northeast towards the former kingdoms of Dorvinia, the hills become higher and more rugged, and the terrain becomes mountainous. The highest point in Borca is Mount Gris, whose peaks are almost always surrounded by clouds. The mountain was once known for its rich veins of silver, and now is full of abandoned caves and mines, home to countless bats. Mount Gris divides the northern region of Borca in two. South of the peak's slopes, the region is known as the Steading Spread, and its heart is the city of Vorziden. The rocky soil of the hills does not allow massive agriculture, but the region is used for grazing and has prized vineyards. The city divides the forest of the region. To the north of the city are the Ziden Woods, and to the south, following the Strecura River, is the Tainted Woods, which extend to the Barovian border. These forests have a variety of poisonous herbs and fungi, and many claim that their poison contaminates the soil and even the streams that are born in the region. To the north of Mount Gris is the region known as the Dodak Heights, a treacherous and dangerous hilly region, only sparsely populated. The only forest in this region is the Royal Woods, close to Lichburg, considered as Ivan Desliznia hunting ground. This forest is commonly called the Twin Woods, since many trees have two trunks born from the same root, which curl up fighting for nutrients, as if one acted as parasite, draining nutrients from the other plant. Many rivers run through the lands of Borca. The Luna River comes from the lands of Barovia and crosses the Borca domain before joining the Great Muzard River in the lands of Hishmula. The river is navigable for its entire length in Borca and is an important trade route. The Vasha River is born in the mountains of Borca and divides into two rivers. The Upper Vasha runs north towards Gehenna, but now it falls into the abyss of the Shadow Rift. The Lower Vasha goes south before joining the Luna River as a tributary. Finally, the Strecura River springs from Lake Strabo. The large lake at the foot of Mount Gris has clean and potable water, but shortly after the Strecura River springs from the lake and goes down the rugged terrain in the direction of the Vasha River, its waters become contaminated by the poison of the Tainted Woods. The region of Borca, especially close to the mountains, are marked by small rivulets and hot springs, which sometimes form geysers and cauldrons of sulfuric and bubbling water. The people of Borca call these geysers and hot springs hell spots, and the local folklore say that they are home to dragons and demons, and that the souls of people burned by the waters can be seen in their vapors. Some of these thermal waters are hot enough to melt the skin of the unwary, but many are channeled to cities through aqueducts. Borca is crossed by many country roads, but it has some notable highways. The Skite Road comes from Falkovnia in the north, and then follow the banks of the Vasha River towards northeast, connecting several cities until it reaches the Gates of the Gravel, an estate owned by Ivan Desliznia. The Crimson Road comes from the former kingdom of Gunderak, currently Barovia, passing through Levkarest and going up to Sturban. The Old Slavish Road emerged from the eastern border and ends at Levkarest, being the road that connects Borca directly with the plains of Nova Vaza, crossing horizontally the entire length of Barovia. Finally, to the north, the seldom used Lich Road leaves Lichberg and heads towards Falkovnia, until it joins the Silewald Road. All roads in Borca are reasonably well maintained, but are plagued by banditry. Merchants usually hire bodyguards, but commoners are subject to the attack of bandits or the extortion of the militias that patrol such roads. The flora of Burka is marked by many trees such as oak, beech, chestnuts, and cherry trees, which abound especially on the west of the domain. Despite the presence of hardwood, most of the Burka forests have spaced trees that do not reach great heights. A plague of blue-gray lichens is spread through Burka's trees, draining their life and preventing their growth. Most trees do not reach old age or the maximum size and die, strangled by lichens falling to the ground. Due to the plague of lichens, Burka's forests are less closed and dark, and dead and fallen trees create a fertile soil prone to the birth of a myriad of undergrowth vegetation, wild flowers, and various fungi. For unknown reasons, the plague of lichen does not spread beyond the borders of Burka. Burka vegetation is also known for the large number of poisonous species. Although this is not always the case, countless purplish plants tend to have potent poisons, and the population has learned to fear any vegetable or food with this color. The purple color of its dangerous vegetation is so striking that the fear of poison has spread into the culture of the Burkan. The color of mourning in this land is purple. The symbol of forbidden love in Burka is the passion flesh fruit, a very sweet purple fruit considered an aphrodisiac. Although in small portions it has no dangerous effect, the fruit is slightly poisonous and addictive, and can be fatal in large portions. Another plant of great symbolism in the culture is the Caldura rose, with a pink tingle white button, which exudes a delicate aroma. If cut off from its base, however, its saps quickly exudes a sickly and nauseating aroma. In Burka's artwork, these flowers represent marriage when whole, and adultery when cut. The fauna of Burka is typical of a temperate climate, with frogs, snakes, bats, wolves, and bears. Most of the great predators have already been removed by the advancement of civilization. The bats that infest Mount Greece are seen as a source of fear and superstition by the population, who attribute the death of people and cattle to attacks of the legendary night swarm. The population of Burka is mostly human and is composed of diverse ethnic groups, linked by cultural ties and strict social contracts. There is also a considerable population of halflings in Burka, but this free-spirited race is rarely bound by the indentures of servitude as the human population of Burka. Due to this, many of them live on the margins of society. Many act as guides or translators, giving their extensive experience in traveling through the lands of the mists, but a large number of halflings live in the cities as criminals and pickpockets. Burka human's population is usually slim and tall, and has skin tones ranging from pale to lightly tanned. Men and women often wear long hair, with men wearing it loose and women adorning their hair with bows, tiaras, and other ornaments. Their eyes and hair can vary in color, but most of the times are dark or brown. Both sexes are overly concerned with aesthetics and beauty standards, and it is common for them to search for cosmetic products to preserve their youth. Interestingly, it is common for the population to rapidly develop signs of age, and there is much debate as to whether this is the effect of the climate or the mineral beds under thermal waters. The most likely cause of these age signs is probably due to the heavy work routine of the poor, as the richest do not show these signs, and some members of Ivana Boritsi's court remain disturbingly youth and beautiful. Burka fashion is a mix between traditional Barovian dress and the more modern influence of the Western realms. Among the commoners, men and women dress in a practical way, with simple trousers, blouses, and dresses, usually in neutral colors. However, the rich landowners in Burka usually take inspiration from Demoli fashion and wear fine fur coats, jackets, and ornate dresses. Burka's elite generally wear more sober tones in their garments, wearing white robes only while attending religious ceremonies. They adorn themselves with a lot of silver jewelry, which historically refer to the rich veins of silver that were extracted from the Mount Greece, that in the remote past were the object of disputes and conflicts between the wealthiest families in the kingdom. Lovers and concubines are prohibited from wearing silver jewelry, as a means of distinguishing them when attending to high society gatherings. Borka speaks the Balak language, sharing a common origin with the lands of Barovia. However, the nobles of the Dislizia family, returning from their exile, brought the Mordentish language to the kingdom, which is now practiced among the elite courts. The language of the Halfling race, the Teringli, is also practiced by the small people and has been used by criminal groups to pass information secretly. Borka's society harbors great deals of social inequality, and its structure is based on an indenture system, contracts and obligations signed between the wealthy landowners and merchants, and the great mass of the poor and the destitute. Despite the elite's arrogance, Borka's aristocracy is not made up of nobles of birth, but rather wealthy merchants and landowners behaving like princes. The only nobles and true powers of the realm are Ivana Boristi and Ivan Disliznia, and a person can rise or fall quickly from the graces of these overlords. The instability of an individual in Borka society means that the contractual alliance with large houses and families play an important role in the social structure, providing them with a network of support and influence. Intense are the intrigues, disputes, and conspiracies for power among these power-hungry family clans. Although there is no slavery in Borka, to find ways to survive, most of the population of Borka is bound by indentures to provide services to a master, and they work hard all their lives. This contract system is reflected in Borka's culture, which has a great appreciation for written word. The smart Borkans are always looking for a way to work around their indentures, without breaking with the terms and obligations already signed in contracts. A child is the property of their parents until they learn to write, when they become legally able to sign contracts, including work indentures or wedding agreements. Even though marriage to a child is seen with reproach and considered an act of despair. Marriages are considered as an important means of celebrating alliance between the family houses of Borka, and are always arranged between members of the same social level. Nuptial contracts are handled between the spouse's family, and it is not uncommon for these contracts to provide for extensive obligations, not only for dowries, but also for the maintenance of a minimum income, political alliances between houses, and commercial agreements. There is no formal divorce in Borka, but disputes seeking annulment of unions and reparations due to breach of the nuptial contract are quite common. These marriages rarely take romantic notions into consideration, but the people of Borka are extremely passionate, and the practice of adultery is widespread in society, even if done in secret. Many young men and women become fixed lovers and concubines of the rich, receiving financial aid for their love and discretion. Borka society is known for its advanced knowledge in herbology, and very few bastard or unwanted children reach the end of a pregnancy. They are also known to frequently produce and use a wide variety of narcotics, stimulants, and aphrodisiacs. The importance of contracts in the written word means that most of the population, even poor peasants, learn to read and write, although they receive no education beyond the basics. If they are able, commoners seek to learn a trade through apprentice contracts. Borka's wealthy and affluent usually receive a formal education through private tutors and through educational academies in Levkarest. This education is deficient, and the wealthiest family usually send their children to learn at the renowned academies of Rishmula or Damoli. The people of Borka gather around the table for meals, with the family patriarch or host having a prominent position. The cuisine of the region is famous, but eating habits clearly demonstrate the social inequality. The poor population eat grains and potatoes, rarely eating meat, with siorba, a wheat porridge mixed with beans, as their typical dish. The drinking of dark beer is common even among the young. The elite eat at banquets with many dishes, with starters, main courses, and desserts, usually accompanied by brandy and wine. One of the most popular dishes is the foie divisé en beurre, made with liver and onions and cooked with oil and butter. Although most can read, literature is not much appreciated in Borca. Other arts, however, receive wide support from their main rulers, and Lady Ivana is known as a patron of musicians, singers, painters and sculptors. Lord Ivan Disliznia is a theater enthusiast and hires troops of artists to come to the Gravo estate to present his plays. Borca's architecture is famous for its ingenuity, and its architects are sought after for projects in various kingdoms in the core. Some cities benefit from aqueducts that bring even thermal waters to their homes, and many of the buildings are famous for having escape tunnels and secret rooms and passages. While the urban population of the cities live in tenements, the mansions of the noble and wealthy of Borca are marked by bright colors, ornate facades, balconies and benches. It is common for nobles to have an internal courtyard in the middle of their palaces, with fountains and gardens where they usually receive visitors. The houses and commercial establishments are generally large brick buildings with steeple gable roofs. Most have 2 floors, but it is not uncommon to find buildings in their cities with 3 or 4 floors. These tall buildings make the narrow streets in their cities become immersed in shadows, even during the day, with their busy squares serving as a breathing and lighting points. Thermal bath houses are common, and most cities are surrounded by ancient walls, dating back to the invasion of the Turks when they occupied Barovia. Although the population of Borca considers itself more sophisticated and educated than the Barovians, it is undeniable that they share a common history and culture, and many of their legends and superstitions are spread among the population. They have no restrictions on the practice of alchemy, herbalism and the manufacture of tonics and potions, but most of the population see the use of arcane magic with reservations, and understand its practice as something dangerous, involving concessions and pacts with supernatural forces. As for their religious views, the life and routine of the people of Borca is deeply marked by the Church of Ezra. In the remote past, the people of Borca worshipped the god Andral, a religion they shared with their Barovian neighbors. However, after the founding of the Church of Ezra, the faith had a massive expansion in Borca. Most of the houses have small shrines dedicated to the goddess, and statues of Ezra can be found in the entrance arches of the homes to bless their residents. The great cathedral is made of white marble and stained glass, and took years to complete the construction, impressing by its grandeur. The church has autonomy in its properties and has its own guard. Life in Borca is marked by countless sacred festivals, occasions when the poor find relief from their constant work, and the aristocracy takes the opportunity to conspire intrigues at balls and dinners. The fervor of Ezra's devotee leaves little room for the growth of other faiths, and there are growing feuds between these devotees and the iron faith of Bain, the lawgiver, of the lands of Nova Vaza and Hazlan. Another religion that once was practiced by Borcans was the faith of Hala, but today its priestesses maintain their services in the remote and mostly inhabited regions to the west. After an edict by Presidius Donella Borovsky classifying Hala's faith as dangerous and corrupting witchcraft, the people of Borca turned their back on the helpful priestesses, and they became scapegoats on many occasions. The current realm of Borca has its origin on the 9 city-states of the former Borgia region, also referred as Borgia. These cities, controlled by families of merchants and bankers, were once integrated to the Kingdom of Barovia in the remote past, but founded an independent nation when tragedy struck Barovia. Borca is a plutocracy, and true power comes from wealth, and all wealth comes from land properties. All lands in the domain belong to only 2 landowners, who control the kingdom, the cousins Ivana Boritsi and Ivan Disliznia, who hold the title of Sefaza and Sef, respectively. Since the unification of Borca and Dorvinia, The Borca government, if it can be called that, has been divided between Ivana and Ivan. While Ivana uses her influence on the Merchants Guild and established control over the kingdom's economy and taxation, Ivan took control of Borca's army, becoming the head of a wide network of militiamen. As landowners, they rent or lease their properties to their advisors and beneficiaries through indenture contracts. These people, called stepans, start to manage their lands and allocate a percentage of 20% of their profits to their masters. These stepans replicate this behavior, subletting their lands and properties by means of new indentures, and these structures extend to the most humble and poorest of the inhabitants of Borca, who pay to live and work hard in these lands. The titles of nobility granted to the stepans do not stem from their noble birth, but are related to the income they transfer to Ivan and Ivana, and those who provide greater wealth are allowed to call themselves barons and counts. This false nobility has enough autonomy to govern the land they lease from their overlords, and they hire private soldiers to guarantee order and collect taxes and fees within the limits of their property. Lord Ivan is currently concentrating the efforts of raising a Balkan army, calling for a common coordination of these militias. He sells to the stepans the right to embroider Borca's insignia in the uniform of their soldiers, expanding their area of autonomy, with the condition to submitting to eventual requests from Lord Ivan. The only area free of Ivan's influence today is the lands owned by the Church of Ezra, which did not join Ivan's coalition and continues to maintain its lands with a private army of the church. These militias are supposed to protect the population and guard the roads, but it is not uncommon for them to levy taxes on passage and to enforce bribes for the security provided, or to fulfill their most basic duties. Borca's justice system, derived from the law written at the time of the independent city-states, is where injustice and corruption are most easily perceived. The judgments of a crime carried out on a given property are the responsibility of the stepan responsible for those lands, and their sentence usually hang on the side that pay more to the judge. While it's possible to appeal decisions to superior landlords, and even to the Seth and Cephasa, more money will have to be spent to buy the time and attention of these nobles. Most sentences impose monetary reparations, and the system established values to indemnify not only damage to property, but also to a person's life, valued at twice the amount of their annual income. Obviously, the life of an aristocrat is worth much more than the life of a poor peasant, and the wealthy can commit crimes without much consequence. Those who are unable to pay their condemnations are thrown into prisons of forced labor until their debt is paid. If the judges believe that the criminal will not be able to pay their compensation, the death penalty can be applied to settle the debt with the life of the criminal. Finally, duels are also accepted as a means of conflict resolution if both parties agree and there are witnesses. Even in these cases, the wealthy have an advantage, and the law allows them to replace themselves in duels, hiring champions to fight in their place. Borca's economy can be divided in two tiers. Most of the population work by plowing the fields, wood cutting, taking care of herds, or breaking rocks in the mine of their landlords. Bound by indentures that guarantee housing and food, and some meager coins. The entire production belongs to the stepans, and most of the food and drink produced goes to the table of the masters and nobles. During the winter, many peasants survive only thanks to the importing grains from Falkovnia, and become even more indebted. Those who have some skill or trade get a slightly better life in the city, working for the guilds. In addition to the oppressed working class, the stepans are dedicated to the administering of merchant guilds and commanding industrial activities to transform raw materials into manufactured products. Some live off the income of their lands, and dedicating themselves to artistic activities. Finally, the wealthiest family engage in banking activities, with the usury industry being the best known activity of Balkan economy. Some families own a vast wealth and can easily borrow money, capable of hiring armies of mercenaries or carrying out large construction projects. A letter of credit from a Balkan banker is accepted as secure payment in most kingdoms, but bankers never lend money without considerable guarantees. Borka's kingdom is located in the heart of the core and is a center of trade and the source of intense diplomatic interactions between kingdoms. Although the realm negotiates the purchase of grains from Falkovnia, Borka fears the invasion of this war-hungry neighbor and is one of the signatories of the Treaty of the Four Towers for mutual alliance and defense. Borka has common origins with the Kingdom of Barovia, but its cultural aspirations are much closer to the lands of Hishmullah and Demonli. To the south, relations with Invidia, who was once his main trading partner, become strained, thanks to Malakio's boldness and aggressiveness, and the constant invasions of his soldiers in the frontier to hunt down Vistanis. Our trip through the lands of Borka reveals to us a society marked by inequality, injustice, and corruption. However, all our investigation does not bring us any closer to finding the Amulet of Souls and fulfilling our pact with Inahira. In search of a way to investigate the nobility and history of these lands, we pose as historians and pay a fee to the local Stepan to search the library of his mansion for the historical records of these lands. The old mansion once belonged to a renowned architect from Borka, who disappeared after falling from grace, and we wander through his library, practically untouched by its new owner. Join us, subscribe to this channel and activate notifications, and together we will investigate the history of the realms of Borka and Orvinia, and unravel its past of betrayals and murders, from its former integration into the Kingdom of Barovia until its independence and unification.